This is the second Microsoft Project 2010 tutorial from the series of 3 Microsoft Project tutorials. In this video, we're going to look at copying, inserting, moving tasks, and creating phases out of tasks, linking tasks to establish relationships, lead and lag time, and finally non-working days. Let's look at copy, insert, and move tasks and how to create phases out of tasks. Indenting and outdenting methodology is used to create phases from tasks. Summary tasks make phases, and subtasks are represented by tasks below the summary task. Summary task is essentially a summarization of subtasks which fall under it. In case of manual and automatic scheduling, the duration of summary tasks is calculated based on its subtasks. The time difference between earliest start date to the latest finish date of subtasks determines total duration of the summary task, which is automatically scheduled. Automatically scheduled task is switched to manually scheduled task if either the duration is modified or its start or finish date is changed. Complex projects require a combination of top-down and bottom-up approach so that accurate tasks and phases can be created. It is not uncommon for the management to design major phases of the project, which is top-down approach, and then let relevant department resources fill in detailed tasks for each of those phases, which is bottom-up. In top-down planning, an overview of the project is formulated, specifying but not detailing any summary tasks, which means approaches from general to specific. A bottom-up approach is piecing together of tasks or subtasks to give rise to the grander tasks or the phases, which is approach from specific to general. So let me demonstrate copying, inserting, moving tasks, and creating phases, summary tasks, and tasks. Go to the File tab. On the left-hand side, click on New, click on Blank Project, and then click Create. Once you do that, a blank file would open. Now let's say we already have a bunch of tasks in a text file or in a Word doc, and we just simply want to copy those steps in our project file. So let me just show you. So here are the tasks. These tasks are around selecting universities. So these are the tasks. Summary and subtasks are differentiated by outdenting and indenting in this particular Word document, and project recognizes outdenting and indenting in another file type. So let me just go ahead and copy this. I can either press Ctrl+C on the keyboard, or I can simply go to the Home tab and press Copy from there. Let me just minimize this. And now I'm going to come back to the project file. I'm going to click on a cell under task name, and I'm simply going to paste it. So I can either press Ctrl+V, which is what I just did, or I can go to the Task tab, and under Clipboard there's something called Paste, so you can press that as well. Once I do that, I'm just going to retain source formatting. Alright, notice that indenting and outdenting has been recognized by Microsoft Project, and summary tasks and subtasks have automatically been created. Let me just go to the File and Options menu. In that, let me go ahead and click on Advanced, and let me click on Show Project Summary Tasks so that you can see. And here I'm simply going to type in the name University Selection. So now let's say I want to be able to move this task to the bottom. I can simply click here and then just simply drag it. You notice that black line has appeared, and I'm going to drag it all the way at the bottom, and then I'm just going to leave it because that's where I want to drag it. And here you have your task in the last row. So this is what you call moving the task. In case I want to insert a task, I can simply go to the Task tab. Under Insert, I can click on Task drop down and I can simply click on Task. So a task would be inserted above the cell. And I can just type in any name I want. If you would like to delete certain tasks, you can simply right click and go to delete task and it's going to delete tasks. You can as well insert tasks from here, or you can roll to a certain task. I'll show that to you in a minute. So let me just go ahead and delete this task. And let's say I want to be able to roll to that task. So it's just going to scroll to that task in the timeline. That's what it just did. When you have a lot of tasks and the timeline is huge, then this is the best way to approach a particular task in the timeline. Notice that none of these subtasks are linked to each other. So we are going to go ahead and link these tasks. But before we do that, let me tell you that linking tasks actually establishes relationships. And there are two aspects to the finish to start relationship in a task. Linking tasks essentially establish relationships, and there's always a start time and an end time in a task. So there are two aspects to the finish to start relationship in tasks. The first one is dependency and the other one is sequence. Second task must follow the task preceding it, which means a sequence. Second task can be initiated only if the task preceding it is completed, which means there is a dependency. A task whose start to finish date determines the start or finish date of its successor task is a predecessor task. A successor task is where start or finish date is driven by its predecessor task. In project, any or all tasks can be predecessor and successor tasks, as either they are followed by a task or tasks follow them. Only the first task is a predecessor because following tasks depend on it. So let's go ahead and link these tasks. So I'm simply going to select these subtasks all the way at the bottom. I'm going to go to the Task tab, and under Schedule, there's something called Link. It says Link Tasks. So I'm simply going to click on it. And here you go. All your tasks are linked. Once my tasks are linked, I'm simply going to click on this drop down and I'm going to auto schedule everything, and I'm just going to drag and drop this. So it's going to assign appropriate start and finish times, assuming that each of these activities are taking 1 day. And look, it has automatically calculated the total number of days for the summary tasks. The way it has done this is by simply adding the number of days for its individual subtasks. So 5 days for the first summary task and 3 days for the second summary task. If you want to unlink certain tasks, you can go ahead and click on this icon and it'll just unlink. But I'm not going to do that, so I'm simply going to press Ctrl-Z. Although it might sound a bit complicated, but tasks can have 4 different types of task relationships. The first one is finish to start, which is also known as FS. In this kind of task relationship, there is a specified relationship between the finish date of one work element and the start date of another. This is the simplest and most common type of successor dependency. For example, one work element may start when its predecessor finishes. In this case, all our tasks have FS kind of relationship because they only start when the predecessor task has completed. This is evident by these arrows over here in the timeline as well, and also by the start and finish date. And the third way of verifying this is by going to the predecessor column. And when you see this 2, this means task number 2, which is identified by this particular row here. When you see this 3, it means this particular row. In a more sophisticated example, one work element may start 10 days after its predecessor finishes. Now let's look at the second relationship, which is start to start, also known as SS. In this kind of relationship, work of task 2 cannot start until task 1 starts. In the real world, SS dependencies take place when two tasks can be done simultaneously. When two tasks can be done in parallel but also share a dependent relationship, user can consider changing the status to SS to efficiently complete the project. For instance, an editor can receive the manuscript and start copy editing some chapters, while at the same time author can write other chapters. Two tasks can take place side by side. In addition, for example, you have Teachers' Day. Students are in the process of organizing it. So they need to invite teachers and they also need to inform staff and students. Since there are many students, some students can go ahead and start inviting teachers and other can invite students and staff members. So these two tasks can actually share an SS dependency. So how can we do that? Once we have these tasks in our timeline, then we can go to the View tab. We are going to check this box called Details, and we are going to click on this drop down and click on Task Form. Once that is done, notice predecessor name and successor name has appeared here. So after clicking on informing staff and students, then I'm simply going to go to predecessor name and I'm going to click on inviting teachers. Once I do that, the next column is type, so I'm going to click on this drop down and I'm going to select SS. Once I do that, notice that an arrow has appeared here. This particular type of arrow, which is connecting the start date of both of these tasks, simply implies that these two tasks have an SS relationship or start to start work dependency. Our next type of task relationship is finish to finish or FF. Tasks that cannot finish until another task has finished, which means finish date of the predecessor task determines the finish date of the successor task. For example, tasks that require specific equipment must end when the equipment rental period ends, or the inspection of electrical department cannot finish until wiring has finished for the department. So let's say you have these two tasks, which is essentially inspection of electrical department and wiring. Both of these tasks take 1 day, but we know that inspection cannot finish until wiring has finished. So we can link these tasks with FF relationship. How can we do that? Once you have your task form available, click on inspection of electrical department and then go to the task pane and under successor name click on the drop down and then click wiring. Once you do that, then go to type column and in that change that to FF and then go ahead and click OK. Once you do that, notice that these two tasks are linked with an arrow at the end of their finish dates. This means these two tasks have finish to finish relationship. This is also evident from the fact that predecessor column for wiring says 12FF, which simply means task 12 finish to finish task relationship. The trickiest kind of relationship is start to finish. This happens when the user needs to create just-in-time scheduling. The start date of the predecessor task determines the finish date of the successor task. For example, if a car is taken to a mechanic and he or she needs to install a radio in the car, as well as fix auto gear, and all of this needs to be finished by 5 p.m. The mechanic will schedule the work and estimate the time that it would take to do both of these tasks. Let's say installing radio would take 30 minutes and fixing the auto gear would take 60 minutes. So, in a sense, backward scheduling is done because 5 p.m. is the deadline, which means mechanic needs to start the work latest by 3:30 p.m. to complete by 5 p.m. So, the start of the task determines the finish of the task, which means fixing the auto gear will determine the finish time of installation of radio in the car. So let me show you how we can do that. Let's say we already have typed in these two tasks and we have typed in the duration it'll take. Once we go to start date and finish date, it's in days format. So this is not very helpful. So in order to rectify this, we are simply going to go to the File tab and under Options. So we are going to go to the General tab, and under Project View, there's something called Date Format. We're going to click on that drop down and we're going to select a particular date format. In this case, we are simply going to select this one, which also has time to it. And I'm simply going to click OK. Once I do that, the date format has changed. And notice that PM and AM has appeared. Once I have that, I'm simply going to type in 5 p.m. because that's when I want the task to finish. So it has just taken the current date, so I'm just going to modify that. Let's say I want that to happen on the 15th of December. So the time has remained the same except that the date has changed. And I'm going to just change the duration back to 60 minutes. Once that is done, then I'm going to put in the finish time for the first task, which is going to be 30 minutes. So obviously it's going to finish at 4 o'clock. So 4 p.m. Again, I'm just going to change the date and the time. Now let's look at something called lead time and lag time. Lead and lag times can be used to adjust relationship between predecessor and successor tasks. For instance, 2-day lag time between the end of a predecessor task and the start of its successor task can be set. This action would delay start of the successor task by 1 day. Lead time happens when a task should theoretically wait for its dependent task to finish, but still it can start a little early. So the first task and the task following it starts a little early, which means they will overlap. Therefore, it is called lead time. For example, a testing team has to test a program once the development is finished by the programmer. But if the testing team starts testing individual modules of the project or the program while the development of other modules is in process, then the testing time is the lead time. So let's see how we can do that. Let's say these tasks have already been input in the sheet, development and testing. And there are 2 modules in this project. Each module takes 2 days to develop and 1 day to test. So currently it's taking 6 days to finish this project. So let's try to set up lead and lag time. We can see that these are the predecessors of these tasks. Module 2 cannot start until Module 1 has been completed. And then the testing would start, which means after the development stage. But we know that testing of Module 1 can start after Module 1 has been completed, so we don't necessarily need to wait for Module 2 to finish. So in order to set up lead time, we again need to go to the task form after clicking on TG Module 1, which is our testing module. So in order to set the lead time, we're simply going to click on Testing Module 1, which currently has a predecessor of 7, which is Module 2. And then we're going to go to the Task pane, and under that, the predecessor name is Module 2, and there's a column called Lag. So I'm going to click on that. Currently it says 0D. I'm going to reduce it to 2D, and I'm going to click OK. Once I do that, notice the timeline has changed. Total number of days in which project can be completed has reduced right now. Another way of approaching this is, let me just undo this to show you another way of approaching this. Currently the timeline is like this and it takes 5 days to complete it. So another way of approaching this is going to the column where it says predecessor, and in that cell type in the predecessor name, then FS or any kind of relationship that is there. So in this case I'm simply going to type in FS, and then plus or minus the number of days. Lead time is always negative, so I'm going to type in a minus, and I'm going to type in 2D, which means 2 days, and I'm going to hit enter. Once I do that, notice this is totally changed. If I want to do the same for testing of module 2, I can do that because it is not necessary for the testing of module 1 to finish. So once I did that, notice that both the modules can start at the same time because different members would be testing the module. It's just important that it doesn't start before the second module. Now let's look at non-working days. Standard working and non-working time for tasks are defined in project with the help of multiple calendars, and they can be found under the project tab. Under properties, there's something called change working time. If you click on that, another window would pop up, and in that you can click on options, and this is where you can go and change working time or days or year, etc. So for example, if you want to change the working hours, you can do that from here. Let's say you want it to extend to 6:30, 7:30, 10:30 p.m. Based on your convenience, you can do that from here. However, if it's just a one-off incident where you would like to simply include an activity which happens over a weekend, you can do that as well. This simply means that in order to assign tasks in non-working hours or non-working days, elapsed duration needs to be assigned to the task. So how can we do that? Let me take you through an example. Notice that students are organizing Teachers' Day. In order to do that, they have already given out invitations. They have already made food arrangements. All of this will finish by December 9th. By December 10th, which is a weekend, they would like to start the decoration because decoration can take place over the weekend. However, currently project is not allowing them to do that. Let's go to decorating classroom and staff room activity. And once you have set up the entire schedule, which is currently depicted like this in the timeline view, in the duration tab, I'm simply going to type in 2 and ED, which means elapsed days, and I'm going to press enter. Once I do that, notice the timeline has changed, and this particular start date has also changed, and the decoration is starting after working hours, so essentially it's going to finish on December 10th, and the decoration can be done over the weekend. So elapsed days can be used to assign tasks over weekends or non-working hours. I hope this was useful.
This video was brought to you by CXO Learning Academy, a premier learning initiative by CXO Math. For any queries, you can email us at learning@cxomath.com. Thank you.